Today, again, we're in section 4.4 and we're finding exact values of trig functions with given conditions. So in the last video, we focused on when you were given tangent. Now I'm going to do 2 examples today where you don't start with tangent, you start with a different function. So the information that is given to you in this example is that we know cosecant of theta is equal to -4. And we know tangent of theta is greater than 0. And they want you to find sine and secant. So notice we're not starting with tangent, we're starting with a different trig function. And going to the problem, you see this -4, and we know that this is technically a -4 over a 1. What we don't know is which one of these 2 values is the positive versus the negative. So we know sine is y over arc, so cosecant is r over y. And remember that r stands for a distance. It represents the radius. So a radius can never be negative. So in terms of information that we know, I know r has to be +4. Because again, it's a radius, which means that 1 has to be negative. So the reason you see a -4 divided by a 1 is how you get this -4 as a result. So what we need to find is our x value. So we're still going to use that x squared plus y squared equals r squared. It's just now, again, you're given different information. So we're looking for x. So plus a -1 squared equals a 4 squared. Notice I put parentheses around that. -1 squared, the quantity becomes +1. Subtract 1 from both sides. X squared equals 15. So x equals the square root of 15. Because in that last step we square rooted. Now, I know that x equals the square root of 15. The last thing we need to figure out is, will this be positive or negative? So going back to our whole all students take calc or all surfers dance constantly, I'm telling you that tangent is greater than 0, so tangent is positive. And I know tangent is positive in quadrant 3 and quadrant 1. So those are the 2 quadrants I have to pick from. Now remember, we do know that my y value is negative. So the only place that would overlap with these 2 quadrants of a y value being negative is the 3rd quadrant right here, which means that's enough information to determine that x is negative square root of 15. Now that I figured out x, y, and r, I have enough information to find sine and secant. So sine is y over r, so my y value is -1 over 4, so that's done. And secant is r over x, so 4 over the square root of 15, negative. Again, can't leave the square root in the bottom. We know we rationalize, so this becomes 4 root 15 all over a -15. And you could have bumped the negative up to the top and made it be a positive in the bottom. Doesn't really matter as long as one of them is negative. So that's an example of when we don't start with tangent. So we're going to do another one similar to that. Okay, so the information given in this one is that cosine of theta is equal to -2/3. And the information that's given to you is that tangent is greater than 0. And they want you to find sine and tangent. So again, not starting with tangent, we're starting with cosine. And we know cosine is x over r. So in terms of x, y's, and r's, I know my r has to be the positive of those 2 values because the only way you can have a positive radius is the distance. It has to be positive. So my r is 3, which means x has to be the -2, and what we don't know is the y. So we're going to use our x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So negative 2 squared plus y squared equals 3 squared. So 4 plus y squared equals 9. Subtract 4 over from both sides. Y squared equals 5. Square root both sides. Y equals 5. Now again, before I write it up at the top, I want to figure out if this 5 is going to be positive or negative. So drawing this out all suffers tan constantly. And similar to last time, tangent is positive in quadrant 1, in quadrant 3. Notice I have a negative x value, which means I have to be somewhere over here, so that means the overlap is going to be in that third quadrant. So our y value is negative 5. So when I find sine is y over r, so negative 5 over 3, and that's it. We don't have to fix that up at all. And tangent of theta is y over x, so negative 5 over a negative 2, which ends up being a positive 5 over 2. So this again kind of brings up a good point. When we start with problems similar to this, and let's say you started with a tangent and they're both positive, remember that they could both be negative, such in this scenario. So that's all for today.